We're serious about Utah Lake, but we don't take ourselves seriously.
Welcome to Utah Lake Explore More, the official podcast of the Utah Lake Authority. I'm Sam.
And I'm Courtney.
And in this podcast, we'll explore one of Utah's most important natural resources, Utah Lake. We'll talk with recreation experts, community leaders, conservation professionals, and the people who know the lake best. Whether you fish, birdwatch, paddleboard, live nearby, or simply want to learn more about this incredible lake, this podcast is for you. In future episodes, we'll discuss everything from lake restoration and wildlife habitat to recreation opportunities, water quality, local history, and exciting projects happening around the lake.
Before we discuss the Utah Lake Authority and what we do, let's talk about the real star of the show, which is Utah Lake.
Yes.
First of all, if you haven't been to the lake, now is the perfect time. Get out there and experience it for yourself. Have your own experience at the lake. I think you'll really like it. Utah Lake is the defining feature of Utah County. It's one of the state's most important natural resources. It stretches about 150 miles, and it's the largest freshwater lake in the state. Utah Lake is a unique lake, and thus it requires a unique management strategy, and that's where we come in. For thousands of years, people have relied on and connected with Utah Lake. At the same time, Utah Lake is often very misunderstood. Thousands of us drive past the lake every single day without realizing how much wildlife it supports, the recreational opportunities it provides, or how much work goes into protecting it and improving the lake for future generations. And this is exactly why we're creating this podcast.
Yeah.
Whether you've spent years enjoying Utah Lake or you're just beginning to learn about it, we hope that this podcast can help you discover something new.
And that's why we come into the picture, right, of Utah Lake Authority, right? This lake has such value and it needs help, needs management, needs guidance. And over the generations, there's been a lot of different people involved. At the state level, the federal level, the local level, trying to do good and trying to manage the lake. But back in 2007, and even in a few years before that, a lot of the local leaders in the state realized we needed something more cohesive, something to provide structure and collaboration across the entire lake, both physically as well as entire lake, both topically, meaning water quality and wildlife and recreation and land and all these different things. So in 2007, they formed the Utah Lake Commission, and that's actually who I worked for back in 2016 when I first started here. The Lake Commission was the first attempt to create what they referred to as an interlocal entity, right? A body that's sole purpose was to eat, sleep, and breathe Utah Lake only, right? Because the cities, the county, the state agencies that touch on Utah Lake for jurisdiction or physically with a boundary, it's one of the many things they're trying to juggle. The Lake Commission's effort was to only focus on the lake, to try and coordinate between those partners, to improve the lake's management, to improve access, vegetation management, all these different things. And that entity was around from 2007 until 2023. In 2022, the legislature created the Utah Lake Authority. Now, you'll notice there's a bit of an overlap. That's because when this first happened, it was only two of us, my boss and I, and we had to run both entities at once, start up the new entity while we closed out the old entity. Now, the authority, the way I like to describe it to people is it's the Utah Lake Commission 2.0. It's meant to just be a further improvement on the same idea. So the official charge that the Lake Authority has is to coordinate the management of the lake. So we work with federal agencies, state agencies, counties, cities, businesses, nonprofits, and residents to coordinate that management effort. And that involves looking at the lake from a 10,000 foot view. We're not just looking at one city section of shoreline or just one element of management. We're trying to identify the gaps in between all of those. We're looking at water quality and vegetation and wildlife and recreation and access and land management and community outreach and education. All of those things come into play in the management of Utah Lake. So the Utah Lake Authority works between all of those. We find the gaps. We work on securing funding for the lake because there's not a lot of ongoing funding available for the lake. So we seek a lot of one-time funding, whether that's grants or donations or federal appropriations, et cetera. We work a lot on planning projects, right? So we guide stuff that's going to develop trails or stuff that's going to maintain and improve the vegetation on the lake. And we work on projects. That can be everywhere from roads improvement project to trying to provide life jacket loaner stations across the lake for people to borrow life jackets when they need them, including to projects like education, right? Like Courtney, you've worked on a lot of our stuff to do with our education for kids in classrooms and also down at the lake.
Yes.
Or our website or the social media channels, and this podcast is a part of managing the lake, right? Those all fall into play in managing Utah Lake. So the authority's job is to try and work with all partners who are interested in the betterment of the lake, try and find the different shared objectives of how we can work well together, and do that work and spread the news about that work, right? And it is a village. We talked about that before in a previous episode, that it's not just the Lake Authority, right? We're one that's here to coordinate between it, but there is so much hard work coming from so many different partners, whether that's Provo City or Saratoga Springs City or Utah County or the State Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, or nonprofits like Conserve Utah Valley and others. It takes all different kinds of people, of interests, and of desires to help at the lake as we manage it. So this is actually where that hook we had at the beginning of our podcast comes in. It's a line from our brand guide that we use a lot with our staff, which is that we're serious about Utah Lake, but we don't take ourselves seriously. In the spirit of that, I wore one of my more casual shirts on the podcast today.
Okay, frogs.
I've got some frogs and flowers, and I think there may even have been a fish, bird. I got a bird on there too. Not something maybe that anybody who's not seen this podcast knows before, but I usually dress a little more formally. We try to have fun. We try to make silly. I think we talked at the first episode of this podcast. It might look real formal with our folders, and we're trying to be prepared, but we're also just here to have fun. We're here to try and teach.
This is actually an attempt to look formal.
Yes. This makes me feel safer behind here.
Exactly. That's what it really is.
But when you look at what we do as an agency, that is how we approach it. We want people to have fun. We want them to explore more at the lake, hence the name of our podcast. That also comes from our brand guide. It's one of our core values is for us as employees to explore more, but to encourage people to explore more at the lake as well. Because there is so much diversity of wildlife and of opportunities at Utah Lake, and it has so much to offer. Now, from that, you got a little bit more about the agency, right? We also want you to know who we are, right? We started this podcast, and you're hearing from Sam and you're hearing from Courtney. You're probably wondering what is going on.
Who are you?
Yeah. Why should we trust you or believe what you're saying, right?
At me?
So as far as introductions, I'm already talking, so I'll keep the mic if that's okay. I'm Sam Brager. I'm the Deputy Director of the Utah Lake Authority. As I mentioned a moment ago, I actually started working at Utah Lake 10 years ago in 2016. I was finishing my bachelor's degree in recreation management at BYU, and my predecessor in my position at the time actually was from the same program. When he was leaving, sent the job over. I saw it, thought this sounds like a cool opportunity, and I went for it. I started as the outreach coordinator for the Utah Lake Commission. What that meant was I basically ran our special events like our Utah Lake Festival, our field trips for fourth graders. I tried to promote recreational programs, and then I did all of our marketing and communications. It was a big task, and frankly, I wasn't very well trained for it. I had to learn a lot of it on the job, but I loved it. My wife likes to joke that if you want to hear me talk for 45 minutes straight, you ask me about my job, because I'll talk. I've learned to love the lake. Now, currently as the Deputy Director, I oversee a lot of our internal operations, what some people might call the boring stuff, but I actually enjoy it, of our finances and HR and transparency and auditing and all of the budget, all these things. But my real passion is the other part of my job, which is recreation. And I love that I get to work on recreation at the lake. And that involves a variety of things, whether that's trying to help recreation businesses at the lake and providing services for people like paddleboard rentals or classes and programs and tournaments at the lake. It's also things like trying to do planning projects, right? To try and bring better amenities like boat ramps or sections of trail to go all the way around the lake, hopefully, fingers crossed someday.
It'll happen.
But a lot of a recreation amenity development, planning and projects to try and improve the public's ability to interface with the lake, to come down, have a safe and enjoyable experience, and want to return and be able to keep visiting and bring other people with them. So that's a little bit about me, if you will. Courtney, I'm going to let you talk, though, because now I feel like I've just been talking for way too long.
That is okay. My name is Courtney. I'm the Education Program Coordinator for the Utah Lake Authority. I'm also their unofficial naturalist, biologist, whatever you want to call it. So I'm originally from California, so please don't hate me, Utahns. I know, I'm sorry. But I've lived in Utah for almost 5 years, and I have absolutely fallen in love with it. I have a degree in wildlife conservation from BYU, and that's where I fell in love with environmental education. I worked at the Bean Life Science Museum on campus, and I realized that's what I wanted to do. And this job felt like a perfect segue from all of that. My first 2 or 3 years of living here, I actually never went to Utah Lake. You're
not alone. That's pretty common, and we found out.
Yeah, that is a very common thing. I was not alone in that. I was told I would talk about Utah Lake. I would admire it from afar, but I was always told, why would you go there? It's so gross. It's just muddy and dirty, and there's no point. And so I would just avoid it. And then I heard one of my professors was talking about the Provo River Delta, and I was like, I need to check that out. And so I went down there one day, and I literally have been going to the lake at least once a week ever since I went there. And now here I am. I'm working for the lake, so it's kind of full circle. Yeah.
Visiting it wasn't enough.
Yeah, I took that visitation really seriously. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'm a huge outdoors person. I just love being outside. Hiking, camping, rock climbing, anything you have, I will try it. I love it. I think it's super fun. So as the education program coordinator, this is a brand new position, and I'm really trying to build it out, just feel it out. But yeah, I want to create some really fun educational programs and get as many people involved with the lake as possible. I
love how prepared you were for this. I was like, hey, here's some history about my job, and you're like, here's who I am as a person.
This is me in the core.
I feel like I totally missed the opportunity of that, but that'll wait for another episode. But I feel like we should end with what if you had to pick one activity, what's your go-to activity at Utah Lake?
Oh, I really like birding at the lake.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably
it's a good fit. 226 species of birds, right? Throw that little tidbit out. Lots of opportunity for it, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's paddling. I have 3 little girls, and we actually took our youngest, who is 17 months this week, for her first time paddleboarding over Memorial Day weekend on Utah Lake, and it was adorable.
Does she have a little life jacket?
She did, and she hates it because unfortunately for babies, it's really tight, right? Because you're trying to make sure they don't drown.
Oh, yes.
But she hated the life jacket, but it was terrifying for me as a father because I'm on this paddleboard, and I would call myself an amateur paddleboarder. I've paddleboarded for years, but I'm no expert. But she kept wanting to stand up. She wanted to stand, so I literally ended up kneeling and basically tucking her so she felt my stomach against her back, and then paddling around her. And luckily, she finally clued in and she kind of held still. But she insisted on standing on our first time paddling together.
Ready to
go. Oh yeah, she was all in for it. And my 2 olders do as well. They have their own paddle boards, so I love paddling on Utah Lake. The Delta is a great site for it. A lot of the marinas are great sites. But that's something I think that is an important part too, is that we own, that we love and we use the lake too, right? We're not just talking about our jobs from our desk, that we're out there using it from a work perspective, from a personal perspective, but also that that also influences how we view it, right? No more about birding. I've never birded at Utah Lake, unless you count the few birds I see while we're out there working, right?
Usually he identifies them wrong.
I almost always get them wrong.
Yeah.
I try, but I'm terrible at it. But I think that's important too, that some of the people we're talking with are gonna have different perspectives based on how we use the lake, how we interact with it, and what our priorities are. So I think that's just important. I wanna make sure we share that with you guys.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now that you know a little bit about Courtney and I personally, wanted to wrap up our episode today just hitting with some examples of what day-to-day work at the Lake Authority looks like. And we'll obviously talk way more in detail about projects and planning and stuff in the future. But Courtney and I each picked one out that we wanted to share with you today. One I'm working on at the moment, I refer to as our master plans project at Utah Lake. There's 35 public access points at the lake. We're currently working on developing a park master plan for 11 of those. So what we mean by that is this is a 20-year vision for what should the lake access look there, what should maintenance be done, what kind of improvements or expansion can be done to further improve amenities at the lake. So we're working with the state park in Provo is our biggest one on the lake, is one of them. We're also working with Utah County for Lincoln Beach on the south end is another one of marinas. And then we have a handful of other beaches and trailheads and sportsman access, which are primarily hunting and fishing accesses, that we're also developing these all in one fell swoop. So all of 2026, we're working on this. You may have seen an opportunity about a survey online. If you see that, please do take it and help us let us know what you want at the lake, right? We want to know your feedback and your ideas. But that's an example of a planning project that we pursue. We work with partners to develop a vision for an area of the lake so that we're pursuing improvements and maintenance that's going to help the lake be all it can be for people who use it.
Yeah. As far as education goes, we've been working a lot on 4th grade. We have some old lesson plans for our 4th grade field trips. So basically, we send teachers these lesson plans, they teach it to their class, and then the kids are more ready when they come visit the lake for their field trip day. And so we've completely redone all of those lesson plans and updated them to match the new state standards. They've shifted some stuff around, and so we had to just rematch them. And I'm also working on making some things for secondary education. So that 8th grade-ish age range is what I'm looking at, and just creating some curriculum, some field trip experiences for that age group. So yeah, that's what I'm working on.
Cool. So that's a little taste of things that we do in our day-to-day. We'll share more of those in the future so you can learn more about the agency and what work we do at Utah Lake.
Yeah, you'll definitely be hearing a lot more about all of this good stuff. But thank you for joining us for this introductory episode of Utah Lake Explore More. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Utah Lake, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And until next time, get outside, explore more, and we'll see you at the lake.